G'day guys, Rukshania, thanks for joining me for the news vlog. I hope you've had an awesome day. My first story is on ASIO. ASIO is the equivalent of, Australia's intelligence service. So if you're watching from overseas, something similar to the FBI or CIA, something like this, but for Australia. Now, there's two stories involved in them. One is around the threat to Australia, the threat of terrorism, and which group of people are the most threatening in terms of what the ASIO assessment is when it comes to this. And the story that's really perplexing is ASIO has let the public know pretty much, especially through the media reporting that we're seeing at the moment, that there was a former Australian politician who was in the federal parliament, whether in the Senate or the House, but is practically a traitor to the nation. But they won't give a name. They haven't given a name. So everyone is now speculating who this traitor politician who's apparently sold out the country is. So we're in this bizarre situation in Australia where everyone's pointing fingers at former politicians or this party or that party and saying that this is the traitor, this is what they did, or we think it's this person, could be this individual that's been accused of something similar in the past. It's quite bizarre, really, that it's kind of becoming unraveled in this manner. And I don't even know how this individual is going to end up being named and what the repercussions of all of that are. Because if ASIO has found someone who's potentially a traitor and investigated it and, didn't take any further steps to deal with it, or maybe they did, we don't really know. And this guy's still running around. Maybe he's in Parliament at the moment in terms of being able to use his prior access. I think politicians who are in the Senate or the House of Reps, they have the ability to still access Parliament after they leave. Who knows what this individual is up to? Is he still being monitored by ASIO? Why the name drop? Well, not the name drop. Why the drop of the fact that the Parliament has a traitor right now? It's quite perplexing how this is all unfolding. I'll just read this from the ABC. ASIO has revealed an Australian politician betrayed the nation. Here's what we know. Who is the former politician? Mr. Burgess, who is the head of ASIO, was very careful and guarded in his language when describing the politician. He didn't give much away. All we know is that they are a retired politician who was recruited several years ago by a group of foreign spies for an unnamed country referred to by ASIO as the A-Team. There's no detail as to age, gender, political affiliation, when they retired, or whether they were a frontbencher or a backbencher. The accusation from Mr. Burgess that this individual tried to bring a member of a Prime Minister's family into the orbit of the spies suggests they were pretty well connected, although there could be many people in politics. Now, allegedly, this individual they tried to get close to was through to former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull through his son. Now, I've seen some other news outlets report on this connection, and like I said, this is all very bizarre. A foreign government has attempted to infiltrate at the very top of Australian politics, Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Neill told ABC afternoon briefing. Every politician in this country needs to understand that the work they do and the information they have is incredibly valuable to foreign governments, and there will be attempts to use friendships, to use networks, to use technology to try to find out that information. We all have to do a better job of protecting ourselves. So, this is quite perplexing because, politicians, if you ask them today, there's people on the liberal side of politics who are saying, it's Labor. On the liberal side, I've seen people saying it's on the Labor side, I've seen people saying it's a liberal ex-politician. This back and forth, and there's even individuals saying that, we should have named this person because of whatever assessments and whatever risks that might pose or the technicalities of it. But this is what the ABC says about why charges haven't been laid in this case. The latest legislation only came into effect in 2018. The type of behavior that Mr. Burgess was describing, if covered by the new offences and definitions, may well have occurred prior to that. So the definitions of the laws that stop people from being involved in this type of traitorous espionage-style behavior may not cover the time period that this politician engaged in this type of behavior. When revealing the laws in December 2017 and asked whether they would apply retrospectively, the Attorney General George Brandis had simple response of no. Of course, espionage laws were on the Commonwealth books before 2018 in a slightly different form. I think this is old-fashioned espionage, and I think it's been a crime in Australia since 1914, Michael Shubridge from the Strategic Analyst Australia told ABC News Radio. So even though Mr. Burgess told us this happened some years ago, before the espionage laws were strengthened, it would still have been a crime at the time, and I can see no reason that there shouldn't be a prosecution. Shadow Home Affairs Minister James Patterson, a former chair and current member of the Parliamentary Joint Committee on Intelligence and Security, said it was a regret the individual wouldn't face legal consequences. So yeah, very bizarre. Let me know if you guys have any inkling of what is actually going on here. Is this even important, this story today, after so many years have passed, when this person was potentially committing this traitorous espionage style activities? If even that was going in the manner that this is being described by ASIO, I'd love to know your thoughts. Again, very perplexing. And on that same note, ASIO has come out and also said that Islamic terror our top threat. So let me read this from the Australian. Spy Chief Mike Burgess has warned that Sunni Islamic violent extremism poses the greatest religiously motivated threat in Australia, and revealed previously classified details of a foreign interference operation that recruited a former politician who tried to link spies with a family member of the Prime Minister. Oh, we had that before. In his annual threat assessment in Canberra on Wednesday night, Mr. Burgess acknowledged a realistic possibility of a terrorist attack or attack planning in the next 12 months, and expressed concern about the rise of nationalist extremists, including some seeking a race war. Mr. Burgess said the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, which fears the potential of a lone wolf attack, has been on high alert since Hamas-led massacre on October 7th last year in Israel and subsequent Iran-backed attacks in the Middle East. We have seen heightened community tensions that have translated into some incidents of violence connected to protest activity, Mr. Burgess said. So apparently, according to ASIO, there is a very real threat within these 12 months that Australia could face some type of terrorist attack, or at least a planning of some type of terrorist attack, and they're very worried about an Islamic terrorist attack. Now, this is ASIO coming out and saying this. I know in the past they've said other things around these matters, and we also know now that ASIO had a certain Australian politician who they were monitoring and known about committing treason that they didn't do much about. So I don't know what's happening exactly with ASIO and how effective they actually are in managing these type of things. Next up, guys, is a story from the UK. Rishi Sunak, he says protests descending into mob rule. He's warning the police. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has warned police chiefs of a growing consensus that mob rule is replacing democratic rule. He wants a more robust police response that he says are needed to protect politicians and democratic processes. This includes an immediate response from police to intimidatory protest at MPs' homes, but human rights groups Amnesty International says the MP wildly exaggerated the issue. Mr. Sunak was speaking the day after Home Office announced a $31 million package aimed at protecting MPs, stating it was in response to the impact of the ongoing Israel-Hamas conflict. Now, a lot of UK MPs have become the target of protests in all types of different fashions, some targeted at their homes, in their offices, followed on the street. So they're boosting the security around the MPs and protecting MPs, which is, again, the politicians need protection sometimes because of the types of decisions and types of issues that they are involved in discussing. I understand that. Of course, we've seen these politicians, especially in the UK, reluctant to protect members of the public, right? The police reluctant to protect members of the public facing very similar circumstances as these politicians. But you're seeing the state here, especially in the UK, jump into action to protect the political class. When I personally think that the issues that the world is facing around these types of unruly, undemocratic mobs and the chaos that we're seeing in some parts, really that are really pulling at the strings of what makes a cohesive, especially diverse multicultural societies in the West. It's pulling at these strings, and what's needed is a robust response that takes care of every element of community and not just protects the MPs. But like you said, Rishi Sunak is now completely worried because the political class is heavily under a form of attack from activists, and they can't take the pressure. Next up, guys, is Joe Biden. He had his health checkup. Apparently, according to Joe Biden, he said the doctors that did the checkup, the annual checkup, said that they think he looks too young, right? And as a part of his checkup, he didn't do the cognitive test, right? Because according to his press secretary, allegedly rocking up every day to be the president of the United States, that in itself is the cognitive test. He doesn't actually have to do one. being the president itself is the cognitive test. I mean, these people are ridiculous. Complete, utter madness in the Biden White House. And the fact that these doctors are saying that, oh, he's a perfect bill of health, he looks too young. They're just gaslighting every single person who can see for themselves very clearly when they look at this dude and the administration he runs, just how dysfunctional he is. And he is a old man, fragile, senile old man, as said by his own DOJ report. What more do we need to say about this? Next up, guys, more states coming after Donald Trump. This time, Illinois judge disqualifies Trump from GOP primary ballot because of ex-president's role in January 6th. An Illinois judge on Wednesday barred former President Donald Trump from appearing on the state's Republican primary ballot over his role in the Jan 6, 2021 riot in the U.S. Capitol. Illinois is the third state to remove Trump 77 from primary ballots, citing the 14th Amendment so-called insurrection clause, joining Colorado and Maine. Cook County Circuit Judge Tracy Porter, a Democrat, paused her order until March 1st in order to give the former president time to appeal. Porter's decision overruled the bipartisan Illinois State Board of Elections, which dismissed a challenge to Trump's candidacy last month after determining that he didn't have the authority to rule on whether the GOP frontrunner's role in the riot violated the Constitution. Again, we continue to see this lawfare, this time in the GOP primaries. I guess maybe Nikki Haley has a chance after all in Illinois thanks to this kind of lawfare. Is this what she's hoping for? Complete and utter nonsense. And on that as well, there's been another development in the Supreme Court this time in relation to another case with Trump, and this is about to see whether he can be prosecuted for election interference overall. So the Supreme Court sets April arguments over whether Trump can be prosecuted for election interference. Interesting. The Supreme Court on Wednesday agreed to decide whether former President Donald Trump can be prosecuted on charges he interfered with the with the 2020 election, calling into question whether his case could go to trial before the November election. While the court set a court date for a quick resolution, it maintained a hold on preparations for a trial focused on Trump's effort to overturn his election loss. The court will hear arguments in late April, with a decision likely no later than the end of June. That timetable is much faster than usual, but assuming the justices deny Trump's immunity bid, it's not clear whether the trial can be scheduled and concluded before the November election. Early voting in some states will begin in September. So all of this is being set up almost like a movie ending, right? We're getting to the climax very slowly, and all of these cases are building up, and whether Trump can get immunity as a president, what the Supreme Court will decide, the cascade effect of some of these rulings might determine what happens during that time. I think it's going to be complete madness, complete chaos. The Supreme Court is most likely to chuck out this Colorado court's motion, whatever they're trying to pass through, and side with the president. That's my firm belief in this instance. But there's going to be a lot that happens as a result of these cases, and a lot of gaslighting, a lot of misinformation and disinformation. Biden's going to try to play off this. It's going to be wild. And lastly, guys, Julian Assange is awaiting, I guess, the results of the last appeal that he had in the UK in relation to his extradition into the US. And I just wanted to share with you something from his lawyer, Jennifer Robinson, who says that the death penalty, right, if Julian is sent to the US and charged and they put him through the process, the death penalty has not been taken off the table by the US. That is how hardcore they're going after him on this. So let's play this video, and I'll just give you a bit of insight into what Jennifer Robinson, his lawyer, is saying.
This is potentially Julian's final appeal in the United Kingdom. We've sought permission to appeal. It was refused at the end of last year, and if we're unsuccessful this week, he has no further appeals in the United Kingdom. But I think the court was receptive to the arguments. So we heard arguments this week about how his extradition should be barred because he's revealed evidence of US state criminality. So we heard a long exposition from our counsel about the impact of the revelations from WikiLeaks about torture, about war crimes, about human rights abuse in the context of the US war on terror, and that he's being prosecuted and punished for having revealed evidence of US state criminality, which should prevent his extradition. The judges were very engaged with that. They were very concerned about the arguments around the death penalty. So one of our arguments has been about if Julian is extradited to the United States, he could potentially, on the facts charged in the indictment, face charges which would attract the death penalty, and the US has offered no assurance that that won't happen if he's extradited. The judges were very troubled by that. They were also very...
Hopefully they're troubled enough to grant him the ability to not be extradited to the US. In fact, Australia should continue to negotiate with the US and the UK to bring Julian Assange home. I talked about this a couple of days ago. We had, last week, we had that motion in the Parliament where a lot of the Labour parliamentarians and the Greens actually, in this instance, decided to vote in a symbolic motion to bring Julian Assange home. And I think that's what needs to happen. We don't need to have Julian Assange, this Australian journalist, of course, contentious in many respects because of the revelations around war crimes potentially of the US and other state secrets that he exposed through WikiLeaks. I understand all of that, but to think that after all that had transpired in this case, for him now to be sent to the US and potentially face a death sentence, I know it sounds wild, but stranger things have happened, right? It's crazy, and I hope for a good resolution in this when the actual verdict comes through from the UK courts. Anyway, guys, thanks for joining in for this video today. I'm sorry for it being so late, and I apologize if I'm mumbling on as I'm speaking. I've had a very, very long day, but I still wanted to sit down and make this video and share some of this news with you guys. If you're enjoying my videos, you can of course subscribe to me on YouTube. You can hit that notification bell and you'll get updates as I upload every day. You will also find me on X, Instagram, Rumble, Odyssey, and Facebook at The Real Rukshan, or on my website www.realrukshan.com. Thanks, guys. See you tomorrow.